No one's allowed to place judgment on anybody else's experience. You're the only person who got to be you going through that. And that's what these kind of modalities are trying to open up for people. You know, many of us were told, like, shake it off. You got a roof over your head. Like, what are you complaining about, right? And I'm so grateful that we all are living in a time where, like, we're allowed to talk about these things.
Mayim, welcome to The Squeeze. We're honored to have you.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
So we start each episode with a game called Citrus Got Real. We have this jar full of questions. Do you want me to pull a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll do the drum roll.
We do an ASMR drum roll.
Yeah, I'm very good at it. It's impressive.
Okay. What? If you had to hide a giraffe from the government, where would you put it?
What? Who makes these questions?
Our listeners, our lemon drops.
Oh, okay. It's a great question. My bad.
You know, I feel like this is like a fifth grade, like elementary school, like, you know, quiz where they're like, let's see what the quirkiest answer is from the fifth grader.
Yeah. If you had to hide a giraffe.
If I had to hide a giraffe. From who? Who am I hiding it from?
From the government?
From the government.
I mean, I don't know that my answer would be different. Like, I don't know if my answer would be different if I was hiding it, like, from my mom. I would hide a giraffe in the zoo because, like, there's other giraffes there.
That's smart. It would blend in. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I would put it in the giraffe enclosure, obviously.
Yeah. That's, that makes sense to me.
That's the most reasonable. I don't know why my first reaction in the most humane way would be like a fireplace, like chimney, because like they're long, like they could fit.
Their neck could just
that sounds very humane.
Like in the most,
right.
A very spacious, humane fireplace. If I'm living in a cartoon world where I can talk to the giraffe and he's like, okay, like I'll go in here.
Right.
So he like knows what's going on.
I thought my answer was silly, but then I heard yours and I'm like, no, I think my answer was pretty good.
Yeah.
No, your answer was the most accurate. I think there could have been, and we were like, why didn't we think of that?
Yeah.
Do you even have one?
No. I'm going to go with Mayim on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's probably
Thank
smartest.
you for that genius answer, because I would not have known what to say. Well, let's dive in because we're just super excited to have you. We are big Bang fan. That's, try saying that. We're big Bang fans.
Thank you.
And we're fans of yours and of course your podcast.
Thank you.
But I found it so interesting. I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but I am curious. So in Big Bang, you play a character who's a neurobiologist.
Correct.
But actually, before you did the show, you became a neuroscientist.
Correct. And neuroscientist is a more general umbrella term. Neurobiologist is more specific and indicates the kind of research. But yeah, I was the only neuroscientist who auditioned, though. They weren't like, let's find scientists to play this part.
That was going to be my question. Yeah, when you were auditioning, I was like, was that part of like the breakdown? Like, or was that just coincidence?
So I was called in to audition for, it was actually the season finale of season 3 of The Big Bang Theory. At that time, I had like a just 3-year-old and a newborn. So I had not watched television. I hadn't done anything in the media. Like I had really been, like I was in grad school. So I didn't know what The Big Bang Theory was. It's like a very popular TV show at that time, but I didn't know because I wasn't watching TV. So no, I went and auditioned, and actually the character didn't have a profession at that point. She was just this woman that Sheldon was set up with on a date. And so I auditioned with a bunch of, very, very talented actresses, none of whom, were trained as scientists.
Yeah.
And like on my resume, I had just started auditioning again. Like, I was about to lose my health insurance from being a grad student. I was not in the industry. Like I literally had just had a home birth and was like still actively breastfeeding. So, I literally just like, went and auditioned, and on my resume, like I listed under miscellany, like where you list like can roller skate, speak Spanish and Hebrew, like PhD in neuroscience.
Casual.
So Bill Prady, I think, Bill Prady, who was one of the creators of The Big Bang Theory and our executive producer, he, I think, at my audition was like, "Is this for real?" And I said, "Yeah." But again, the character didn't have a profession at that point. It wasn't until they brought me back in season 4 that she was made. I think Chuck Lorre said something like, "Well, let's make it something so that if we do something wrong, she can fix it."
Oh, that's cool. Got it. So it was very tailored to you.
I guess so, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Did you just use the word tailor? I never would have imagined.
I know, right?
How many times will we say that in this episode? No, it's so funny because I feel like I always saw like neuroscientist in your bio, but I was like, at first I was like, oh, is that like a cute playoff like from the show? And then as I was doing research, I was like, oh my gosh, she actually is one. Like I thought it was just like something like cute that you did, but I was like, no, she actually has.
I think you can tell from my giraffe answer, I'm not really into cute answers or cute things.
Oh my gosh. I'm a nurse and I love like science and big words and stuff. And so doing our research on you, I found what your thesis dissertation was on, and I would love to like know about it. I'm going to read it. You can correct me if the internet got this wrong. Actually, maybe you just say it because I feel like I'm probably going to butcher it if you.
No, I mean, there's a lot of words. You can go ahead and read the title and then I can explain it.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, this is what the internet gave me. Hypothalamic regulation in relation to maladaptive, obsessive-compulsive, affiliative, and I don't even know that word. Satiety behaviors in Prader Willi syndrome.
That is correct. My field, you did great. My field is psychoneuroendocrinology. So the psych part is like when you think of like psychology or psychiatry. The neuro is the brain. I studied the hypothalamus, which is a region that controls a variety of very important functions, including limbic system stuff, which is emotions. And the endocrinology part is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is where all of the hormones that I studied circulate. But the syndrome that I worked with is Prader Willi syndrome, which is a genetic syndrome. It's a spontaneous mutation on chromosome 15. And these individuals have basically genetic obesity, meaning this mutation causes them to not know when they're full. And that's what satiety is. And some of the things about them, they have very high rates of obsessive-compulsive disorder. And that actually was the focus of my thesis, was looking at oxytocin, vasopressin, and cortisol, and if they correlate with obsessions and compulsions in this population. So I worked in the Neuropsychiatric Institute at UCLA. I went to UCLA for my undergraduate and my graduate work. I ended up meeting someone in calculus class, and we dated for 5 years, and we were married for 10. We're not married anymore, but we have a 15 and 18-year-old. My 18-year-old was born right after I finished my coursework. So I wrote my thesis laying down, typing, and breastfeeding at the same time. And then my younger son, I got pregnant the week I filed my thesis. So I took my doctoral hood about 7 months pregnant.
Oh my.
I was that lady on stage, like taking her doctoral hood, like as big as the room.
Oh, wow.
My gosh. I have so much respect from you, literally after talking to you for 10 minutes. The fact that everything you've done, literally from acting all the way to getting your doctorate while pregnant and having kids and like doing all these things. I'm like, I can barely do that. I don't even have a child.
Yeah. Casual thing to throw in there.
Literally. Quite impressive.
I bet you were getting so excited with all of those words that she was saying, and I have no idea what she was talking about.
I love science, and Taylor does not. When I was in nursing school, he wouldn't even like let me practice because you have to like learn how to manually do everything.
Oh,
so
I love
my first semester, I was learning like how to do blood pressure, and he would panic. I was like, babe, it's not gonna hurt you. It just squeezes your arm. He's like, no, I don't want to know. And he would get very flustered and have to like lay down.
I'm amazed you finished, because if I had someone in the house, I would need to practice all the time, all the things.
Yeah. He was You let me in eventually.
Yeah, I drew a line when she was like, I want to practice putting needles in you, and literally wanting to, what's it called?
Do like an IV push.
Yeah.
My mom works in like a med spa and they do like IV,
Oh,
like
yeah.
vitamin pushes all the time.
I live in
And I did one
LA.
on your
You know,
sister.
they do them left
Yeah.
and right.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh, she's like, you have good veins. I can practice. I'm like, absolutely not. That
Wow.
stuff terrifies me.
I guess we know where his limits are, Tay.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We made those very clear from the beginning.
Yeah. Something that I feel like I can relate to in a sense is for people that know you just from Big Bang, you actually started acting way earlier than that. Like you were a full-on working child actor.
Yeah, I was a teenage actor. I was on Blossom, this show, from the time I was 14 to 19. So I spent, 5 years on a primetime television show. We premiered after the Cosby Show, and then we were after the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for most of the time. So, kind of a staple of the early 90s there.
Cool.
I graduated high school when I was 17. So I basically had 3 years of Blossom, when I was finishing high school, and then 2 years out of high school. I started professionally acting when I was 11 and a half, which is very young and also very old for the industry. Most child actors, as I'm sure you know, start as toddlers or, at 6 or 7, doing commercials. That wasn't my path. I really liked acting in school plays, but I didn't come from a family with money or resources to be, taking me around. My parents were public school teachers and my mom was a nursery school director. So, it was kind of something I never imagined would turn into a full life. But I've learned a bit about your experience, in preparing to have you on our podcast. Sort of like, it's kind of strange to take this thing that like you love and you want to bring something of yourself to a craft. And an artistic expression, but then it kind of can have a mind of its own. And then you don't get to have control over how famous you become. And you don't get to have control over what people think of you or what they say about you or what they shout at you in the street.
Did you ever reach a point where you were like, I need to take a step back, and you just felt like you needed to just have space from the industry? Because, starting so young, or?
Honestly, I think somewhere in the third season of Blossom, I was like, is this really my life? I was not a particularly showbiz kid because I wasn't raised in the industry. And, my parents were first generation Americans. They were born during World War II in New York, and they were hardcore New Yorkers who were transplants to LA. So I wasn't raised with this, you're the most amazing child and everybody loves you. I didn't have that kind of persona. I was kind of a mopey kid. I probably would have been that way if I wasn't acting. I was reading Dostoevsky in 10th grade and being the world is so painful. So I kind of found myself though in the middle of a full-time contract that you can't break. And, I wasn't miserable. It was a really, really positive experience. And especially with all the talk about what is happening for child actors and the things that we're learning about things that happened. I didn't have that experience. We had a very safe set. But I felt in some sense a little bit stuck in a life that, again, I think a lot of teenagers might feel at that age, but mine felt magnified because I kind of was stuck. And I was actually supposed to go to Harvard and I ended up having to defer. And, it turned out for the best. They didn't accept me when I was done with Blossom. And so I ended up going to UCLA and, got to live in the same city where my grandparents ended up living before they passed. So it all worked out the way it was supposed to. But that notion of what am I doing? It hit me as a teenager. And then I left the industry, for 12 years. That's how long it took me to get my undergraduate degree. I did a couple episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm in there. I did some voiceover work, but I was pretty much out of the industry for 12 years. My hair was down to my butt. I didn't even know what size clothing I was because I just wore sweats and was a breastfeeding mom. So I had a very different, out of the industry experience. And, also I think for you, you're very, very recognizable and it's very hard for you to not be you, your face, your body, your voice. for me, like, kind of like if you're a lady, like you put on a baseball hat and you don't wear makeup, and most people don't pay much attention to you. So like the unadorned female is often kind of left to her own devices. And that's kind of how I coasted through, you know?
That's so funny.
When we were in like, height pandemic, like we would go to the grocery store and Taylor would wear a hat, sunglasses, and his mask. And people would still recognize him.
They can smell it. They're like, it smells like Taylor Lautner.
I was like, how are we? How? I don't think I would recognize my own husband like, looking like that.
I know. I've had it happen. Like, I've also, another example of that I just find, it's probably the most confused I've ever been with that is being at a ski resort. And same thing, having a helmet, goggles, and like a warming thing over my mouth. The only thing that was showing was my nose.
Yeah. Wow.
And it like one person recognized me and then the word spread. And I think I ended up asking them because I was just so curious. I think I went up to them. I was like, can I just ask, how did you know it was me?
Wow.
Because literally the only thing showing was my nose.
I think you probably have one of the most recognizable noses.
They did say your nose.
That must
and
be
I was
it.
Like, okay.
I'll often get recognized just because of my voice, and that has happened when I'm wearing, because I do have, I am aware I have a distinctive voice. But yeah.
Still, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say
it's impressive.
It is a soothing voice though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My children would disagree.
Oh my gosh. That's good. So growing up while, being in the spotlight, being in those teenage years, you also grew up in an
Wait, sorry, I have to ask a question. The question should have been, where would you hide Taylor Lautner if you had to hide him from draft? Sorry. I put him in a very humane fireplace. Sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm listening now.
No.
We'll add that to our Citrus Got Real segment.
Yeah. No, that's so good. No, I was just going to say, the pressures of being like those teenage years in the spotlight, trying to figure out who you are. You also kind of had an at-home life of environment of alcoholism and having mentally ill parents. What did that time growing up look like for you?
I'm sure you've heard there's a few metaphors here. If you put a frog in, boiling water, it's a different scenario than if you just have a frog in a pot of water and then you turn up the heat slowly. And so, I think it's important to voice that, for those of us who grew up in a different time, if you grew up with alcoholism, if you grew up with abuse, if you grew up with, what we would later define as like, oh, that's going to make trauma for small people.
Yeah.
It's just like, it was at that time just normal, meaning that was normal for me. I didn't have anything to compare it to. Like, of course you watch TV and like, I grew up watching like Growing Pains and Who's the Boss and, all these shows and like 90210. And of course I knew my life didn't look like that, but I always had another reason, right? It's because my grandparents were immigrants. It's because I'm Jewish. It's because, I have large features, like whatever it is. We didn't know to talk about any of this stuff. My father of blessed memory, like he didn't even know. We just knew that there were times when he would stay up for many days in a row and think that he had powers. And then he would also like be so depressed that I didn't know what I'd find when I came home. Like we didn't know what manic depression was. Like nobody talked about it. And the ways that a family has to adjust to that kind of complexity. At the time, it was just like, oh, this is happening. What I know as a scientist, and Tay, what you probably know, as someone who's science literate and a nurse, is like children internalize all of the things going on about them. They try and make sense of it. And, kids do a lot of things to cope. Some kids become, like the entertainer, right? Let me make everybody laugh. Some kids shrink and they kind of disappear. Some kids act out, like kids will behave in different ways. I was a very obedient child. And I really wanted to like fix everything. And I did that not only in my family, but that sort of became my role in friendships. I was the one people came to, and like, there's good parts to that, but also like it can be too much. So, I also saw that pattern in relationships. I was always more interested in what the other person was going on, like what was going on with them. And it's only really as an adult, in my really in my 30s that I started realizing like, oh, I get what it means that you're supposed to put yourself first. Like, what do I
Right.
want? What's my favorite color? Where do I want to eat? Instead of being like, what do you want? Because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in what you want.
Yeah.
Like, that's what happens when you grow up like that, for me at least.
Yeah. Isn't one of the Enneagrams the fixer?
Yeah.
Am I making that up?
Yeah, I'm actually not a fixer. I'm an Enneagram 4, which is the most dramatic, special, no one understands me. Are you a 4?
She thinks I'm a 4.
That means you're a 4, because 4s don't think that any Enneagram can meet our needs because we're so special. Yep, you're probably a 4.
I can't figure it out, but she says you're a 4. Yeah. I'm like, that's interesting. What's the 4 called again?
It's the artists. It's like what are we called? I mean, I just call myself a super feeler.
I think it's like the creative or the hold, let me look this up.
The creative. It's
we're
something
super
like
feelers.
That. Okay. But that makes sense.
The individualist.
Mm-hmm. That's like, no one understands me. Like, I didn't even fit in. Like, I never have a place. There's not even an Enneagram that can satisfy my needs.
Right. But also I feel like it's like also like the feeler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel everybody else's pain and joy, all aspects. You know, I feel everybody else's emotions so deeply.
Yeah, you feel the degree that you feel things. That's why I think that's why we make a good team, because he is like, he knows his emotions and like he feels everything so strong, and I'm too lackadaisical with things. Taylor's like, no, you need to care more. I'm like, you're actually right. And then I could be like, you need to calm it down.
Not get as worked up. I just I go through the highs and lows of every feeling, including other people's feelings. And it really affects me.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we talk about on our podcast. Like, people who have that kind of, profile, like, historically, we would have been given a very special job in our tribe. We'd be the person that people come to so that we can help them understand things. Or maybe we'd be shamans or healers, right? Because we're like feeling something that they may not even feel, right? Sometimes people accuse me of like, you're saying a thing that I'm not even feeling. And then like 2 days later, they're like, okay, I was feeling that. You were right.
Right.
So, it's also interesting that like in our culture that it can be detrimental, because like I sometimes like feel too much. I feel too deeply. Like, I can't just like see a homeless person and be like, that's a homeless person and that's sad. It's like I'm weeping at the freeway off ramp. And like, I kind of like, I want to turn that down sometimes, but I also realize that like historically there needs to be all kinds of people, there need to be people who feel that deeply and can have access to that,
I always say Taylor is like such a good character reader. Like, he could just meet someone and like, if he has a good or bad vibe or whatever it is, like he'll know the intention of someone's action. And I don't even see it. I'm like, oh no, they just did it because of this. He's like, no, they did it because like all this whole deeper reason. And I'm like, wait, you're so right. Like,
that's so interesting.
No, he's great.
He's the perfect wingman on anybody's first date.
Except
that he's Taylor Lautner. And that would kind of be distracting.
That would be
distracting.
Here, I'd like you to meet my friend. They're going to scope you out. Also, they're a very, very famous actor. But just act natural.
That's a good show right there.
Yeah, that is. As many of you know, I started my career working as a registered nurse during the height of the COVID pandemic, and that resulted in me having to leave the field for personal reasons. But that's also what led myself along with Taylor to start the Lemons Foundation. And we're here to continue to increase and share awareness of mental health, and also to end the stigma surrounding it, and to provide mental, physical, and emotional resources for everyone, including nurses. And today I am happy to partner with the skincare brand CeraVe, as well as the Daisy Foundation, to help spotlight this resilient community. As a therapeutic skincare brand rooted in the medical community, CeraVe has committed to a multi-year partnership with the Daisy Foundation, a nonprofit organization that recognizes nurses for their integral service and support to patients and families. Together, CeraVe and the Daisy Foundation are on a mission to encourage patients and colleagues to thank and celebrate the nurses in their lives, both during National Nurses Week and year-round. you can go to CeraVe.com/nurses or visit daisyfoundation.org to learn more about the Daisy Foundation and how to honor a nurse in your life. To learn more about nominating a nurse who has had a profound impact on your life, visit CeraVe.com/nurses or daisyfoundation.org. So I guess we could just, fast forward to being on Big Bang Theory on the note of, mental health. How, at that time, were you more aware of, mental health or what things were, and kind of how was your experience with the show? I'm sure there was like positives and negatives of it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like my own personal journey, I was on Big Bang for 9 years. So obviously we were all there together. The full cast had been there for 12 years when we finished. And then Melissa Rauch and I joined, in the third season. And then the fourth, we were made regulars. So that's like a decade, we'll just call it a decade. So like, think of any decade in your life, think of any decade in any portion of your life, really. A lot of things happen, things happen for all of us, and we got to go through them together. It's very unusual as actors to have a job, especially a sitcom job, with that kind of regularity where we saw I saw them for sure more than I saw my own family. And, in those years, I got divorced. My dad got sick and my dad died. I had grandparents die. Like I had, children transition, like I had all sorts of things like, and, I would say that there was a lot of real comfort in having a place that felt like home. Again, you hear a lot of things about sets, and our set wasn't perfect. Like there wasn't, it wasn't like there was no complexity to what happens when you put a bunch of people together every day for, 10 years.
Yeah.
But I will say that like I had alliances there, I had friends, like that was my people. Those were people who knew things about me often before, even my family knew things about me. I wrote my first screenplay and directed a film. It's called As They Made Us. And it stars Dustin Hoffman and Candice Bergen, which like a lot of people heard about it and some people didn't. But I specifically wrote it with a part for Simon Helberg. And I started writing it at the time that I was on Big Bang Theory. And Simon ended up doing this movie, and I got to direct Simon Helberg. And so the notion that someone that like I worked with I'm just trying to use that as an example to show like how close we were, meaning I wrote this for him. Like we had that kind of relationship. So, and also I'm happy to talk about my movie because it also talks about mental health and growing up in the kind of house that I grew up in. But, we got to go through all those things together. And, I've been in therapy like since I was, I think 17. And so, I maintained a relationship with my therapist for all those years, which was helpful. And a lot of ego stuff comes up, even if there's not competition overtly on a job like that. I mean, Taylor, I'm sure you could speak to this too. There's just inherent ego stuff that comes up when you're an actor, because you're constantly having to like decide, am I good enough? Am I thin enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I this enough? Like, are the directors happy? Like, are the producers happy? Like, being an actor is an incredibly codependent relationship you have, because it really is about like, if you're happy with what I'm doing, then I get to be happy. That's how you know you did it right, is when someone else says, I feel good, let's move on.
Yeah.
So, that stuff kind of comes up. And, life is sort of in session no matter where you find yourself. And I will say that I also started acting before there were smartphones, before there was a PR machine, before, young girls in particular were expected to have highlights in their hair and wear Spanx and get their nails done. I got to kind of be a kid on television when I was, a kid. And then Big Bang Theory was so different. It wasn't my show, which felt great because the pressure wasn't on me. I wasn't in every scene. Like I could still take care of my kids, and I was able to I pumped for over a year while I was there, like I was able to still have a different kind of identity. And I think that was better for my mental health. When I look at people carrying shows in this culture with social media, what it is, and PR, like I would lose my mind.
That's pretty unbelievable that you started going to therapy starting around 17.
I mean, it's never for a good reason that you go when you're 17. It's not you're doing so amazing. Go to therapy. I wasn't crushing it.
But I imagine it's had a massive impact on your life.
I mean, I'm one of those people who, I believe in traditional psychotherapy, and it's not for everybody, but I do believe in traditional psychotherapy, which means, psychoanalysis is, kind of when you think about Freud and you think about people maintaining, a long relationship, or you think about Carl Jung. I've had a therapist. I mean, it's like awkward to say, I've had a therapist for over 20 years. And it's not about like, why am I not better? I mean, I ask that about every other year. But the notion is that, as life comes up, you're constantly evolving. And that kind of relationship is a scaffold of sorts. And it fills in a lot of the kind of emotional and psychological blanks that some of us, or that a lot of us, kind of grow up with. So, for me, it's kind of a way of life to know that I'm accountable to someone who understands me and knows me that way. I also do seek support from, places that support people who grew up in homes like I grew up. We tend to be vague in how we talk about it, but, I believe that those two things, that therapy and the rooms of the 12-step programs absolutely have saved my life. I'm one of those people who, struggled a lot and very deeply, and continue to in different ways. But I have so many more tools now, that many of us are not taught, and some of us learn it different ways. For me, I'm a stubborn learner and I'm a slow learner. So, I kind of I just sort of keep coming back. I keep showing up. And I really like having people around me, that are on a similar path of discovery. And I don't really operate well with kind of like small talk and like light relationships. Like I like to interact with people who are thinking deeply and feeling deeply. Because that's just sort of like where my head resonates. My parents, my mother's, still alive and probably is going to be listening to this. So hi, Mom. My parents were, both like artists and very, very creative, loving, people, very emotional, very complicated. So it's not like I think this is true for a lot of people. There wasn't just one thing that was hard. There was also a lot of good things and a lot of joy and a lot of confusion, and I think it's that confusion that really drove me, to do this kind of work on myself. And I'll be honest, I didn't really use drugs or drink heavily, I wasn't a party person, not to disparage people who are. But I see why people do those things, because you can kind of numb out and enjoy yourself a little bit. And, I choose kind of not to partake, because I know that, addiction runs in my family. It's very, very easy for me to get lost in that. And so for me, like therapy is kind of, that's where I put a lot of my energy, towards trying to, survive as a spiritual being in a physical body, which is really what we all are. Everybody's got a self, and it's in this case, for the time that we're here.
On the note of tools, that have helped your mental health, two things that you've mentioned that I would love to hear more about are food triggers and somatic work.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, fun. Happy to talk about food. I've talked openly on our podcast about this. I definitely I grew up with a lot of strange conversation around food. My family, my grandparents, left Eastern Europe, at a time leading up to the Holocaust. And so there's often a lot of food stuff in, kind of post-Holocaust families, and a lot of families, but in particular, if you've, grown up with anyone who lived through the Depression or lived through those pogroms or was a Holocaust survivor, like there's a lot of emphasis on food and a lot of attention on food. But I didn't really acquire what is, an eating disorder until I was 40. And I didn't know you could acquire one so late. They didn't teach you that in, doctoral school at UCLA, meaning that wasn't my field. And I just didn't know. And I found myself, with some really unhealthy eating behaviors that I was hiding from people. And I ended up getting help, from people I knew in 12-step rooms, and learning more about it. And, they often say the way we eat is the way we love and is the way we spend money. And I found that to be true, because I kind of like either want like all the candy, all the love, all the money, or I'll just like go without everything. And like, I don't need to eat, and I just be a nun. Like I'll be a Jewish nun and I just don't need, like, I don't need to spend any money. It's fine. Everything's fine. So I really like kind of have this like seesawing between. And so, for me, I tend not to use the word trigger unless I'm speaking about it super clinically, but I understand, kind of what you're asking. But, honestly, one of the hardest things for me is being around people who have eating disorders who don't admit that they have eating disorders. And so like disordered eating is very, very common. And it's not for me to diagnose. I should be really clear about that. I don't diagnose people with an eating disorder, but I was even shocked when I came back to the industry, after being gone for 12 years, just how normalized it is to just not eat. Just don't eat, or just like coffee and cigarettes, or like I'll have a little lettuce, or, and sure, there's people with like allergies and sensitivities. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, I didn't know there was a culture of like, oh, here's what you do if you have a red carpet. So you can't eat carbs for 3 days before. And then the day of, like, you can't do any of this. And like, you have to like do a laxative thing. I was like, what? There's like a whole culture around it. I really didn't kind of fall into that. But I think that, especially having kids, like there's this hyper awareness, especially when you live in LA, about appearance and what people look like. And it affects men as well as women,
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, been something for me too, and a part of my journey. So yeah, I really resonate with that.
Yeah. I have to sort of, be accountable to other people who get it. That's part of what I do around it. And also, like, even if you don't have a notion of God, the notion that like, I need to be healthy. Like, what does it mean to truly be healthy? Like, I know when I'm doing unhealthy things to my body, I do.
Yeah.
And so the notion of like my highest good, for me to be in this body is to eat 3 meals a day, to be nourished that way. So, I kind of, try and get back to basics on it. But it's an enormous, if you live in Los Angeles. I don't know if I can explain it to people, like, unless you've been here, like, it's hard to explain that like everyone looks like a fitness model. Like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And that, makes it tougher.
I remember that being like one of the first things that I learned. Everyone was shorter and they were even more petite than I thought they were. Because I'm not from the industry. And obviously my first experience was when we first started dating, like almost 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago. And I remember just meeting people, and I've always been like a smaller person. And I, for the first time ever, like actually really was like, oh, wow, I'm actually like not small. And like that kind of was like making me kind of start to like question my own body and my body image. Which is just so crazy.
Yeah. Even when I was a size 6, I was considered hard to fit. That's hard to fit for the red carpet, a size 6.
Wow.
And I think the average size for women in the United States is like a 12 or a 14. So yeah, when I was a size 8, it was like, oh my God, we don't even know what to do. Like, what do we do? How do we dress this person? And
crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. What was the second thing you wanted to talk about?
The somatic work.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
So, somatic work is, that's an umbrella term that includes, a lot of different modalities. But the basic notion is trying to get you in touch with physical sensations in your body and seeing how they relate to emotions, or if they relate to emotions. So one of the kinds of somatic work is somatic experiencing, or SE. And that was kind of coined by Peter Levine, who we recently had on our podcast. And, what Peter Levine described is what typically women for thousands of years have done as part of their practice. Laying of hands is kind of one way to think about it. If you've heard people talk about energy work, it is a form of kind of energy work, except he sort of explains scientifically what's going on in the body system. Somatic work also calls upon memory systems that may be storing memory. And this is not a conversation. I'm not trying to open up a conversation about like repressed memories and like, did it happen? But if you've ever met anyone who, has chronic pain, or who has what we would call mind-body syndrome, where you have, let's say, an injury that has healed, and there is nothing else physiologically wrong in the body, but pain is still felt in that part of the body. Or sometimes pain will be felt in certain situations or circumstances. That's known as mind-body syndrome. And so some of the somatic work tries to find where's that memory being stored in the body. And, this is, again, something that for thousands of years, practitioners and healers have done. And it's only when science can sort of like put a name on it and describe it and like find the pathway and do electrophysiological studies on it, that people kind of are like, oh, that's a thing. So that's sort of some of it. There's some of this work that is, energetic, and it's Reiki work and it's Tibetan healing and things like that. Sometimes those also are somatic practices, but craniosacral therapy is something that's actually recommended by a lot of Western doctors for certain treatments. Acupuncture, again, for thousands of years has been used, and it operates on the meridians of the body, which we actually know now are real things. It's connected to the fascia system, and, fascia and the interstitium is known as the 80th organ of the body. So all of the somatic, practices kind of fall under this. There's also incredible work being done specifically on fascia, where if you have any scar tissue, which every time you have a scar, that is an injury of sorts, and especially for people who have significant scars, fascia work, where they specifically break up that tissue and see where it attaches to all the musculature. It's a fascinating kind of somatic work. And sometimes you'll have fascia work done, and all of a sudden you'll be in your childhood bedroom in your head. And I've had this experience where I was having work done on, I've had 4 hernias and a bunch of surgeries, and I've had a hand surgery twice. And she's working on, and we're not talking, she's working on the fascia. And all of a sudden, I'm basically describing what people who do EMDR will describe.
Okay.
I'm like in my childhood home. And I'm like, I'm conscious, I'm not asleep. I can talk, and it's as if I can like scan the room. I don't know. And honestly, the practitioner doesn't always know what specifically is being, pulled. But we know that the body holds memory. And if you know anyone who's experienced trauma, the body will hold memory. You will seize up when you're in the location where trauma occurred, right? Or if you've ever heard of anyone having a nervous stomach, that's actually a somatic reaction to an anxiety provoking situation. But if you have someone say, oh, I get migraines when I'm stressed out, it's like, maybe it's all in your head. Or when women report fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, people used to say, it's all in your head. You just need to relax. You just need to have a glass of wine. No, the body is actually holding information, and it can be released in ways that are really cathartic and healing.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think our friend Lauren, she went through a bad accident and she was having work done on her scar. I think it was fascia work for that.
Yeah.
I remember her telling us something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very intense.
Stuff like that is so fascinating to me, just how like complex our bodies are, yet how simple almost in a way. Like we think that there wouldn't be built up memories or something in a scar from an accident, but there actually is, like things like that. I mean, we've both done, well, you kind of started, I fully did like EMDR. And it's just like a crazy process how now, like I did my EMDR because I worked as a COVID nurse, and that was a very difficult thing for me. And I did a lot of work through that and just kind of finally working through what I had gone through.
Yeah.
And it's crazy now how much I feel like I can talk about it, or like I found out through doing it that it not only was a hard experience for me, obviously physically, mentally, the hours I was working night shift, all that stuff, but also I was grieving, this career I was so excited to go into.
Right.
And I nursing was like one of, like, I never did well in school, but nursing school, I was like, this is my favorite thing. I got all A's. I was obsessed with studying. It was my favorite thing. And I ended up learning that I actually was grieving the end, because I had to leave the hospital due to like significant mental health stuff. But I, at the time, was grieving that loss of like a passion of mine too, which I had no clue was going on, and like grieving the loss of something I looked forward to, and, grieving a loss of time too. So it was really interesting that I don't think I would have ever realized that if I hadn't done EMDR.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really impressed that you were able to have that experience. I mean, also just the timing of being a nurse during COVID, like I can't even imagine. And, you know, all of us paid a lot of lip service, like, oh, frontline workers. But like, you know, learning about your experience, you know, it was traumatic on so many levels. It was traumatic on a global scale, and it was traumatic on a community scale, and it was traumatic on a personal scale, you know, for a lot of people. And I think what I really respect about the way I've heard you talk about it is, um, no one's allowed to place judgment on anybody else's experience, meaning you're the only person who got to be you going through that. And that's what these kind of modalities are trying to open up for people. You know, many of us were told, like, shake it off. Like, you got a roof over your head. Like, what are you complaining about, right? And I'm so grateful that we all are living in a time where, like, we're allowed to talk about these things, and we're allowed to say, like, this is touching on something that's older than this, right? Like we say, like, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Meaning if you have a reaction that is strong, there's likely something that it's, you know, touching on. And no one's going to have the same experience. We're all completely different people. And someone else in your situation might have been like, I got this. This is awesome, right?
Right.
But you're allowed to have that experience. And also, like, that's your journey. And no one can take that from you, both the best parts of it and the hardest parts. So I'm just, you know, these are the kinds of things, again, like this is what we talk about on our podcast. Like, it's a human right to have this access to processing. It should not just be something that wealthy people have access to. It should not just be something that people who have insurance have access to. This kind of processing works for a lot of people better than pharmaceuticals that they tell you to take every day for the rest of your life. And no one likes to talk about that.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact is, you know, we talk a lot about the psilocybin research and ketamine research, and what that research is like is it saying that some people can have a transcendental experience, and some people can get there through yoga and deep meditation. Some people get there through holotropic breath work, but sometimes one experience with a skilled therapist guiding you on a journey can help you understand more about your trauma than being told that you have to take a pill every day for the rest of your life that has side effects that you may not want. And I've been on medication on and off since I'm 17. I don't have a particular, you know, prescription for what people should do. There's been times when I think medication's super helpful and necessary, and it can save lives. Absolutely. But for a lot of people, that's not the only answer. And sometimes EMDR is, and sometimes talk therapy is, and sometimes exercise is. You know, exercise has gone like toe to toe with SSRIs in some really powerful studies. Sometimes getting out of your house and finding your people and finding people that care about you. You know, what we talk about a lot on our podcast is you don't have to believe in God, but guess what? Believing that there's something bigger than you is absolutely critical for your physical and mental health. It's called spiritual health. And we're finally hearing, what is it about having gratitude that makes you healthier? It's not just that you have a church function where people will serve you, you know, pudding if someone dies. Like, that's not why religious people have more hope. It's not because they know someone will show up if there's a funeral. It's because they know that they are cared for by something bigger than themselves. And what does that look like for those of us who don't believe in God, right? What does it look like for everybody? But we're all kind of trying to touch the same thing. It's just a lot of different ways to get there. I happen to believe in God. Sorry, I didn't mean to say I don't. I just using an expression.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. No, it's so true. And I think we're really heading into a good space here. I think we're like of mental health and, you know, learning that these things do actually work. So
yeah,
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for us.
We'll be hopeful together.
I know you have to go in 14 minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to ask her? I'm keeping track because I don't like keeping people over. You want to ask her your last question? We can head into our little last segment.
Yes. So we've been talking about your podcast, which we are big fans of, and it's in, you know, the same mental health space. You have been doing it for 3 years now?
Yeah. A couple hundred episodes and counting. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you have plenty of more experience than us. You are plenty more successful than us. We're
plenty more educated than us.
Yeah, for sure. We're just a little baby. And, you know, honestly, we look up to you and what you've done with your podcast and would love to be there in a couple years. since I have you trapped here and you can't go anywhere, if you could give us a piece of advice for our podcast, what would it be?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying all those things. My partner, Jonathan Cohen, is, he's the engine behind a lot of what drives me as a human and as a podcaster. I had never listened to a podcast when we started our podcast.
Same.
I didn't really understand the format. He would argue I still don't understand the format. And he's probably going to listen to this and be like, see, that's how you're supposed to interview people, the way they did mine.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
But, I think that it's hard. It's really hard because, it's a business, meaning you have to pay the bills. You have to keep that pretty neon sign, that's behind you lit up. So you have to kind of balance, the way the structure of this business is. It is a lot about, numbers and like ads and, all those things. And so that stuff gets me really stressed out. And I don't know, Taylor, if you might relate, because like, I'm like a heart with ears, I just want to like talk to people and help people. So I'm really grateful I have Jonathan, and we have an awesome producer, Valerie Floyd. And like, she handles a lot of that stuff so that I don't get bummed out about just like the corporate, like business part of it. But, generally speaking, and I think you already do this, but the level of vulnerability and honesty that I think we can have as people that can like pull eyeballs or earballs, as I call them, the notion that we're not just airing dirty laundry. Like, I'm not looking for people to be like, oh, this celebrity had this problem, or why is she talking about this? The notion is we're all part of this human experience. And so when I choose to be vulnerable, or when I choose to, be brutally honest about things that I've experienced, the reason that I do it is because I want other people to feel safe to do that for themselves. And maybe it'll lead them to further introspection. Maybe it'll lead them to explore therapy. Maybe it'll lead them to ask questions of their doctor that they didn't think they had a right to ask before. And I think, kind of goes back to one of your early questions that Tay asked me. Like, I grew up in a time when I didn't know that it wasn't normal for people to behave the way people behaved in my home. And you don't have to live like that anymore. And the notion is also not, there's a lot of conversation about this generation, and like we're giving them all the mental health words and they're more depressed than ever. And suicide rates are through the roof. And like everybody, like, what are we, like, are we doing something wrong, And so I think it's also important to realize that like, it's not our responsibility as podcasters, right, to fix everything. But if there's something that we can add to the conversation that comes from an authentic place, my hope is that it will open up a conversation and not feel like I'm telling people, this is your diagnosis. This is what you need to do. Like, I don't know. I barely know what I need to do after this, to just like feel okay. So I think that kind of honesty it's really important. And it's a weird culture that we have that like, if celebrities say it, then people will, maybe take care of themselves more. But, for me, I really do. I try and come from an altruistic place. Jonathan often, tells me that just need to be more casual. So you two seem a lot more casual than I do. So I think you're ahead of me. And I was like listening to how you talk, and, I'm glad that I have a partner who thinks I'm adorable. I just sometimes when I hear people speak like casually, I'm like, why don't I know how to talk like that? So I think you have, you have a lovely way of, kind of interacting, both of you together and sort of, with your guests. And so I think that's really awesome. I think you'll always know intuitively, especially if you're an Enneagram 4, if you're doing it for the right reasons, meaning what feels right. And isn't driven by other things. And I think just the way you started it seems so organic. So
thank you. That was great advice. Great advice for sure. I think we're good.
I think we're good on Lemon 7.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We're good.
Oh, now I'm curious what it was. Okay.
Oh, we have a segment that we sometimes do at the end. That's like 7 random questions.
Oh, I want to do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you sure? We'll make it could be rapid fire.
We can make them more, rapid fire.
I can be a little I like that.
Okay.
Let's just go through it. You start.
Okay. This is Lemon 7. These can be rapid fire if you want to explain something. Totally up to you.
Okay.
But
do you know what I'm going to think for the rest of the day and probably the week? I'm going to be like, he didn't think I was fun enough to do the rapid fire.
We just don't want to keep you.
It's fine. Go ahead. I'll be quick.
Okay. What movie or song title best describes your mental health today?
She's like, I wish I didn't do it now.
Right? She's like, why did I say I wanted to do this?
Falling down.
Movie or song title?
Falling down.
Okay, there we go.
Number 2. How open are you with people in your life when struggling?
Like on a scale of 1 to 10?
Sure.
I'm pretty open. I think that, I think especially I spend a lot of time with my children. And so I think there's I've learned how to be age appropriate open because, I grew up with like, everything's fine. And I was like, but I know it's not fine. So when I feel like I'm falling down, I'm also just getting over a virus. But when I feel, when I don't feel great, I've found a way to be age appropriately open and be like, I'm having a hard day or I'm feeling super sensitive. So let's not tease mama today. Right. Or I really, really need help with the chores. Like I need to not ask you 7 times to unload the dishwasher because I'm just like feeling like I don't have a lot of patience. So let's do the chores. And that usually helps because I don't want to pretend I'm okay when I'm not. Like that's really what it's about. And as an actor, like we're taught to like be okay when we're not okay. But with the people who are close to me, I have no choice, but to be open. And also like, I'm told that I have like a cartoon face. Like you can tell when anything is wrong.
Funny.
That's why I got Botox in my forehead because my face was really expressive. I grew up dancing and I got in trouble a few times. My eyebrow would raise and I wouldn't even know it was raised. And they would be like, excuse me. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, it literally just moves. I'm so sorry. So that's why I got Botox.
Oh, geez. Okay. Number 3. If you could only follow 3 social media accounts, what and who would they be? Can go across platforms, but just 3 accounts.
I really like animals. So I don't know that I could name a certain account, but like there's one that
animals
shows
doing things.
Okay, I'll tell like seals sneezing.
Oh, specific.
That's one of the things that I really like. Like I like seals sneezing. I like goats making funny goat sounds. So I'd want one of those accounts. One of those accounts. And then I'd love to follow my older son's Instagram, but he won't let me. But if I in the fantasy world, and I don't think there's anything illicit. And he sometimes will show me things. He's really good at like photography and like things like that. And so I would love to follow him. And then for a third one, I'd probably pick my cousin Rebecca because she takes the most pictures of people in our family so that I could see the maximum pictures of my family.
Love that. Those are good answers.
Seal sneezing. I have to look that up. I have to look that up.
It's very funny. It's very cute.
I wonder if we can like input one maybe on the screen. I'm just going to say it in hopes that one will appear on the screen.
It's adorable.
Number 4 is, what is your favorite form of self-care?
I'm thinking not because like I don't have one, but because there's a lot of ones that I, choose.
Right, because it can be such a wide
It can be broad. And like for some people, it's like, my self-care is going to a spa and having a mimosa. Like, that's not my jam. My jam, which that's fine if it is. But I've recently gotten into kind of more old school instructive meditation. So learning specific meditation techniques. And, sometimes I do like unguided meditation. But I happen to use the 10% Happier app, which has people like Sharon Salzberg and Joseph Goldstein and like some of the original people who brought over meditation and loving kindness meditation from India. And so I like learning from old masters. And so they have all these guided meditations and their voices are just like super soothing. And I learn techniques that I find that I'm using in the day. And so that's been really, hi, Remy. I found that's been really, that's been a very effective form of self-care. Yep, that's your tush. I see.
Just giving you a good shot.
Yep.
It's a cute tush.
It's a cute tush.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. 10% Happier.
Yep.
App.
That's Dan Harris's app. Yeah, based on his book.
Okay, very cool.
Really good meditation. Yeah.
We'll be looking that up. All right, number 5. What would you say is the most misunderstood thing about you?
I want your honest opinion after this, if you are happy that you decided to do this or not.
No, I am. I like these. I'll say something sort of controversial.
Okay.
I'm a liberal person, meaning I identify as a bleeding heart liberal. And I also am a person who believes that Israel has a right to exist as a country. And a lot of people believe that if I believe that Israel has a right to exist, I can't be a humane person and I can't be a compassionate person. And that's a terribly disturbing misunderstanding of me as a human, because my heart hurts when anyone is suffering anywhere. And to be miscategorized as someone who would in any way, denigrate the suffering of anyone in particular in Palestine, in Gaza, is really devastating. So it's kind of a heavy one, but it's true. It's very, very painful to have people not believe that those two things can exist.
Totally.
Yeah. I think you've shown your heart how caring you are.
Thank you. I try.
For people already. So
yeah, sure.
I see it's there.
Thank you.
Number 6 is, who has had the most positive impact on your mental health?
My partner, Jonathan Cohen. 100%. 100%. And like, in a way that I used to hate him for it and fight with him about it. And I have a living amends to make to him for the rest of my life for how dismissive I was of many of the practices that I am now being told by even Western doctors that I need to, employ to maintain my mental and spiritual well-being. So,
wow.
Yep.
That's great. That's beautiful. All right. Last but not least, number 7.
I hope it's fun and not heavy.
You can make it fun.
Take it anywhere you want.
Is it about a giraffe? Okay, go ahead.
It's not about a giraffe or myself. If you could go back to one moment in your life, what moment would that be, and what would you say to yourself?
I gave birth without drugs and unassisted until pushing, about 10 feet from where I'm sitting right now. It was the most unbelievable, empowering. It was intentional. I was intentionally having a home birth, but there was traffic and the midwife was late and I was by myself. And I didn't even know I was ready to push the baby out when the midwife's assistant walked in the door. I didn't know. I had been laboring for about 3 hours and my water never broke. And so I thought, I must not be ready to give birth, but some people give birth without their water breaking. It breaks when the baby comes out. So that was my experience, but I just thought, I'm not ready to give birth. And I think if I could go back, and be able to celebrate, because like the feeling after giving birth like that, you feel like you've just like won the marathon and been given $5 billion to like cure world hunger and solve the solution, like literally create world peace. You feel so powerful in such a, resonant way. And I relished it. I really did. There weren't smartphones at the time. So like, there's like literally one photo of it. But if I could go back, I would love to, to tell myself like, how proud I am of myself that I was able to do this. And I had a very, very different experience for my first son's birth. And so it was very empowering to have that experience. And, I felt proud of myself, but I think knowing what I know now about what I needed at the time, I needed to hear it more.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible. I didn't know that you could that your water didn't have to break.
It's called The Baby's Born in the Caul, CAUL. And it's a very kind of, I was told he would be a very special, mystical child. And indeed, he is a special child.
Wow. Isn't that crazy?
He's pretty cool, but like, that's my kid that was born without my water breaking until he came out.
Wow.
Dang.
That's amazing.
I love that answer. That's such a good answer.
Right? No, it's perfect.
Oh my gosh.
See, aren't we glad we did it? I can be fun.
Yes.
Yes.
Are you happy? I'm happy. Are you happy?
I feel really happy.
Okay, perfect. That's all that matters.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I've, in that short period of time, learned so much from you. So just really grateful.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me on, and can't wait to have you on Mayim Bialik's Breakdown.
We'll see you soon. Can't wait.
Thank you, guys.
This podcast has been brought to you by Podcast Nation.